In this edition of 2020 Daily Trail Markers, early voting is already underway in Nevada ahead of Saturday's Democratic caucuses. The latest poll in the state shows that Senator Bernie Sanders is leading with 25% support. He's followed by former Vice President Joe Biden, who has 18%, while Senator Elizabeth Warren is polling at 13%. All three will be on the debate stage Wednesday night with former Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Senator Amy Klobuchar. CBS News 2020 campaign reporter Alex Tin joins me now from Henderson, Nevada. Alex, you're at an early voting location where some people, I understand, have been waiting in line for hours. What's going on there?
Well, yes, I'm here at Sun City Anthem, one of the many early voting locations available for Democrats here in the state of Nevada this week. Some people here tell me that they've been waiting in line for hours, up to 2 or 3 hours, just to cast their ballot ahead of the Nevada caucus on February 22nd. Now, the main complaint you hear in line obviously is about the wait. You also hear people complaining about because they have to wait in line, they feel like there isn't sufficient accommodations if they're disabled or elderly. But inside of the room, we haven't heard the same kinds of complaints that many volunteers were telling us they were fearing. Despite concerns about, poor training or insufficient time to prepare, the process inside is going slowly but smoothly. People are arriving at the location, they understand how to fill out their ballot, and they understand how to cast their preferences in this early caucus.
Well, Alex, we know that Senator Amy Klobuchar received a surge of endorsements in Nevada today. Tell us about who's endorsing her and how that could impact her, how she does in the caucus.
Well, the fact of the endorsements coming this late is certainly a shocker. Amy Klobuchar has had a handful of staff in here in this state for a few months now, but it's only now, just with a few days before the ultimate caucus day, and while early voting has already begun, that Amy Klobuchar is just beginning to rack up endorsements here in the state. Compare that to people like Joe Biden, who not only has racked up hundreds of endorsements here in Nevada, but just over this past weekend notched the endorsements of both Congressman Stephen Horsford, an influential swing district Democrat right here in southern Nevada, but also the Lieutenant Governor, Kate Marshall. So, yes, Amy Klobuchar does have some new endorsements here in the state of Nevada, but she still has a lot of ground to make up and not a lot of time to do it.
Well, let's also talk about Senator Elizabeth Warren. She won 0 delegates in New Hampshire, the last state to compete. How is her campaign working to recover from this, and how does Warren hope to set herself apart in Nevada?
Well, you have to understand, Senator Elizabeth Warren has had for months what many people thought was one of the most robust field programs here in the state. On the ground, developing relationships, getting precinct captains and volunteers for months here in Nevada. But of course, in the past few weeks, what we've seen is that all of that preparation doesn't necessarily make a huge difference when it comes to things like turnout at big rallies. Take, for example, Amy Klobuchar, who I just told you just began bringing in her staff in the past few weeks. She had hundreds of people at events these past few days, has been touting getting over 1,000 people at one event in northern Nevada. By comparison, Senator Elizabeth Warren, despite a busy schedule campaigning right here in the state of Nevada, has been struggling with an additional problem. She seems to have come down with some kind of flu or cold and has begun losing her voice, to the point where at one event last night you could barely hear her talking. But of course, to her supporters' delight, she will often begin by acknowledging the fact that she's lost her voice and saying, quote, "Nevertheless, I persisted." That's something that a lot of supporters like about her, and that's something that certainly she's going to have to do if she wants to continue to compete in this contest in these final few days.
Always good if you can work your slogan into your stump speech like that. Senator Bernie Sanders and Mayor Pete Buttigieg were neck and neck in both the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. As you heard me in the introduction, Sanders has a major lead when it comes to the polls out there in Nevada. What accounts for the differences?
Well, Bernie Sanders has a couple of things that have been working in his favor here in Nevada. Obviously, one is his field program. You know, just like Senator Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders has had a massive field program on the ground here for months, developing relationships, building volunteers, getting people persuaded and convinced not only to support the senator, but to come out and early vote or early caucus for him. Of course, all of that work takes resources, and that's something that uniquely Bernie Sanders has here in the state. You know, I was just at recently, they were holding a community soccer game here in the community on the east side of Las Vegas, a historically working-class Latino community in the Las Vegas Valley, where they were brought together soccer clubs that they've been talking to for months. They brought together endorsers that they've been courting for months. They brought in New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, a recent endorser of Bernie Sanders, just to kind of greet the crowd, talk to them about why it was important for them to vote, and help hand out some of the free food that the campaign paid for all of these people who came out to this East Side community soccer field to play soccer, eat some lunch, and then go early vote for their favorite senator, Bernie Sanders. And it's that kind of advantage that comes from being on the ground for months, from having a lot of resources, and then ultimately having a lot of high-profile endorsers that the Bernie Sanders campaign hopes will eke out a victory for them here in this state, not just in places like Sun City Anthem, but in all of the neighborhoods across what they think is a diverse coalition that could bring them across the finish line.
Well, let me put it a different way for you, Alex. You talked about how Amy Klobuchar was getting a bump off of her better showings in Iowa and New Hampshire. With Pete doing well in Iowa and also New Hampshire, is he receiving any bump out there in Nevada, or is it really Sanders territory?
Well, the poll that you cited earlier certainly seems to suggest that Bernie Sanders has a large lead when it comes to picking up delegates here in this state. But of course, Pete Buttigieg has plenty of support coming from him, not just from new endorsements that they announced over the weekend, but also their own aggressive campaigning schedule here in the state of Nevada. A lot of that support is going to become critical when it comes to getting these people out to vote and, of course, persuading people on caucus day. But one other thing that Pete Buttigieg has in his favor that is, I'm sure, something they hope will help benefit him, is that when you talk to people anecdotally in this line, as well as in some of the older polls that we've seen here in the state, Pete Buttigieg is well-liked. Well-liked enough, perhaps, to court some of those people that are polling below the so-called viability threshold who need to go to a second or a third choice in order for their vote to register. That's something the Pete Buttigieg campaign hopes they can capitalize, especially with all the momentum they have coming out of the first two states.
Interesting. We will watch that. We'll also watch how Tom Steyer is doing. He seems to be polling very well. Alex Tin in Nevada, thank you.
Yeah.